Shaka, surely it's not about the profanity here, more about what Lampard said, calling Liverpool arrogant. What do you think about the words from the Chelsea manager?
Listen, I have no problem with the exchanges as they happen on the sidelines. These things happen every single game between managers, between players, between teammates on the training ground. So there's nothing new or unique about this other than, as Craig rightly points out, the fact that there's no crowd. So obviously we hear it a lot clearer. I do take a little bit of exception to Frank coming out and saying, well, he would have had a beer with Jurgen Klopp, but for what was said on the sidelines, not by Jurgen Klopp, but by one of the assistant coaches. I don't feel that has anything to do with it. You have these heated exchanges. Both men would know this. And then you go and you have a drink, as managers do after the game, and you move on. You know, I don't see why anything lasts about it. But to use that as an excuse not to have a drink with Jurgen Klopp, I thought a little bit silly. And then Jurgen Klopp kind of doubled down on the silliness by him bringing up what Frank Lampard said in the post-game press conference. So a whole lot of silliness at play here that somehow snowballed into an issue.
Craig, just to clarify, do you see any point to what Lampard says when he calls Liverpool arrogant?
No, they're not arrogant. They're the best team in the country this year in terms of the league position by a mile. They have a manager who demands his team work hard. They celebrate. They're enthusiastic. They're a mirror image of their manager in terms of their desire and their enthusiasm and their drive. And I don't think anybody thinks they're arrogant. I think, you know, we don't know what was said from the bench, you know, from one of the coaches, whether they threw something in Chelsea's face. We don't know. So, you know, only Lampard and his coaching staff and the substitutes would have heard that. But certainly from a Liverpool club and playing perspective, there's no arrogance whatsoever. What we have to remember here is Frank Lampard's in his second year in management, right? First year in the Premier League. They needed a point to guarantee Champions League football. They now go into a game against Wolves at home, needing to get something, probably to be in the Champions League. The pressure was on. The result was going against them. Liverpool were tearing him apart at one point. He was not seeing as clear as he normally would, and he had a moment. And there's nothing wrong with that. And we can agree and disagree about the words that he used, but this, as Shaka said, this thing happens, and you know, both of them, I think, have got to admit they got something wrong here, because, as I said, I didn't like Jurgen Klopp saying, listen, we finish it after the final whistle, and he's basically telling Lampard what he can and can't say after the final whistle. I think coaches should sort of rise above that.
Shaka, what about the point that Craig makes here? Maybe the pressure of the end of his first Premier League season getting to Lampard a little bit?
Look, maybe. And of course, that's an excuse, a very good excuse, and may very well have been a factor. But as I said before, and Craig agreed with and doubled down on, these things happen. This is not unique. This is not just about an end of season game. This is not just about a manager in his second year in management, or the fact that Chelsea were under pressure. These things happen every single game, whether it's first v 4th or 13th v 16th. These things happen on the sidelines. It's just taken on a different context because of how clearly you hear it, because of what's on stake as far as neutrals are concerned, and the fact that the managers in play are Jurgen Klopp, who is the Premier League champion and still defending European champion, and Frank Lampard as a player who's seen it and won it all, and a little bit of a clash. There's no more to it than that.
Let me give you an example, Sebi. As Shaq said, these are two high-profile individuals at different ends of their managerial career. But let me just explain how these things sort of happen. Paul Hart was managing Nottingham Forest a few years ago. They were going for automatic promotion to the Premier League. They were playing Reading, who was managed by Alan Pardew, who, as we know, has a fair amount of arrogance. Forest were losing the game. The clock was running down. and the ball run out towards the technical area. Paul Hart went to get it to get his team a throw in quickly. Alan Pardew went to get it, dummied it, let it go, dummied it, tried to be smart, and Paul Hart was going to kill him. He was absolutely going to rip his head off. And I know that because my mate was the coach at Nottingham Forest at the time. He said he couldn't calm him down. These things go on in such a regular basis that it's frightening. But what we have here is two high-profile managers in a stadium with no crowd, with somebody with a camera, by the way, who decided to film it, and all of a sudden it's over social media. Frank Lampard, and I'm sure Jurgen Klopp, really couldn't give a stuff about it anymore. Lampard's got a bigger concern. That's the result on Sunday, which is now of paramount importance. In Liverpool, they've done the business.
Craig, you say it happens all the time, but we've not heard people call Liverpool arrogant before, and we've not heard complaints about the Liverpool bench. This is clearly something different than just heated emotions in a match.
Well, I don't know. As I said to you, if Lampard felt somebody had said something that was arrogant, he's called them arrogant. I think he's doubled down on his words. He's doubled down on his words, and he said, look, you know, tempers and tensions were running high. I've had to think about it. It wasn't ideal, but I'll not be getting locked up and thrown in a prison cell. So let's all move on, because it's an emotional sport. It's an emotional game, and you take that out, and we're absolutely stuffed.
Let's move on to Chelsea Wolves. Frank Lampard discussing who he may have available also at Friday's media availability. N'Golo Kante could be back. Shaka, we saw Jorginho try to do his defensive best in front of that Chelsea backline. How big of a boost would it be to have N'Golo Kante back against Wolves?
Huge. N'Golo Kante is one of the best players in world football in his position, and you have him. If he is showing that he can get through 45 minutes to an hour at his usual pace and being his usual self, you play him, keeping in mind that you've got 5 substitutions that you can utilize during the course of the 90 minutes. That you're not saving N'Golo Kante for anything unless. And this would be a little bit arrogant to think that you're somehow going to overturn the 3-goal deficit against Bayern Munich. You're not saving N'Golo Kante for that. All the marbles are in play here for Frank Lampard against Wolves, and you take every chance that you have to. If it doesn't work out, you've got 4 more substitutes you can call on.
Craig, he's coming off an injury. Is it worth the risk?
Well, here's the risk here. Shaq mentioned the lack of defensive players that they have, and that's true. But here's the risk. They're not overturning the 3-0 deficit to Barcelona, to Bayern Munich, sorry, but he still has the FA Cup final in just over a week's time as well. So he has to make a big decision whether he's going to lose a player for almost 2 games, because if he starts the game, plays 20 or 30 minutes, misses the rest of the game against Wolves, you can make the substitutions. As Shaka said, you've got 5 subs, but then you miss them potentially for the FA Cup final as well. Now they're facing a team in the FA Cup final in Arsenal that have become a very good counter-attacking side with the pace up front. So his inclusion in that game could be of paramount importance. So it's a real difficult decision here for Lampard, because he wants to nail that top 4, but you don't want to lose the player for, a game and a half if he doesn't make it through the Wolves game and then misses the cup final. Only they can make that decision. Only Lampard, the staff and the player, in terms of his fitness, can make that decision. The Champions League's not so important. That's gone at 3-0. But these 2 games are something that they're going to have to think about. If there's a chance he's going to get through the Wolves game, you play him. If it's really, really doubtful, I think you're just going to have to leave him to the cup final a week later.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.